Have you got More Than car insurance behind you? More Than, sponsors of Fifth Gear.
This week on Fifth Gear, graceful slides in a DB7 and whiteout in Iceland.
Good evening. It is a mild spring evening and all is well with my world. But if I was to get into one of these funny metal things driving past, I would magically change from a reasonable, even-handed human being into a nutter. What is it about driving cars that can make us so terribly, terribly angry?
In lane!
Walk in the middle of the road!
And you, mate.
Get out of it. Well, tonight we're going to try and help make the roads a calmer place. We're not getting mad, we're getting even with road rage. It's not a media invention. In Singapore, dealing with angry motorists is part of the driving test, and a recent European survey showed road rage is on the up. The Spanish prefer verbal abuse, whilst the Germans like to tailgate, with millimetric precision, no doubt. In Italy, you'll see a lot of wild gesticulations. And in Portugal, well, they just sit there bored, flashing their lights. And apparently the angriest nation is our own. 80% of people in the UK admit that at some time or another they have been unable to calm their climbing tempers. And you can understand it because I have done it and I'm sure you have too. You're sitting there, very calm, and then there she is. The antique blue rinser in her old Metro. The geography teacher in his Rover 25, or that old favourite, the psychopath in his BMW 3 Series. I have, and I freely admit it, often given them all both barrels. But rather worryingly, not everyone leaves it at a bit of right language. Us Brits are the ones most likely to resort to aggression and violence. Now, we've done some research on road rage and come up with some pretty harrowing stories. Listen to some of these. He engaged reverse and started revving hard. He swerved in front of me and approached wielding a length of 2x2. This is the best. He rammed me and put me in a 20-foot ditch. No, this is the best. He leapt out of his car and put his fists through the windscreen. It's not funny, it's frightening. And Fifth Gear are going to do something about it. Join us in a moment as we prove it is possible to stay calm behind the wheel as we try to reform a serial road rager. And trust me, you wouldn't like him when he's angry.
With all the recent fuss about James Bond and his Aston Martin Vanquish, not to mention tantalising glimpses of a new baby Aston, everyone seems to have forgotten about their best-selling model ever, the DB7. Launched in 1993, its almost too pretty design has been going down a storm on both sides of the Atlantic ever since. I have to confess, though, for me, it's never quite hit the spot. It's never been quite focused enough to match the sheer driver involvement of the best from Stuttgart and Modena. Even with the arrival of the 420 horsepower V12 Vantage model in 1999, it still lacked that certain wow factor. And as far as I'm concerned, the old girl can quite happily slide into a dignified retirement. Aston Martin, however, have other ideas. Take a look at its latest and perhaps final evolution, the DB7 GT. exterior changes have been kept to a minimum and include a lift-reducing boot lid, a pair of understated bonnet vents, plus bespoke 18-inch rims and racing-grooved Brembo brakes. But given a price tag of £105,000, will it now be good enough to tempt me away from a 911 Turbo or even my favourite 360 Modena? Well, apart from the flashy pedals and the odd GT logo here and there, little has changed on the inside, which means it remains rather lacklustre. Made even worse on this particular car by this rather dubious chocolate-coloured interior. The fact is, there's just too much Ford switchgear on show for a car of this class. Indeed, I think the only things I do like are the gear lever and these rather sexy dials. But that's not what we should be concentrating on with this GT version. What we should be looking at is the extra 15 horsepower plus a bit more torque from the tuned-up V12 engine, which isn't a lot, to be honest. Plus there's firmer damping, a shorter final drive ratio for the 6-speed gearbox, which now comes with a slicker change, plus some subtle suspension changes. And the only way to see if they actually make any difference is to subject them to the full rigours of the Nidell testing process. I've already learned that this DB7 is still a fairly soft, wallowy car. And OK, it's got those Brembo racing brakes to help stop it, but nothing will stop that rear end breaking away when you try to get the power on the road. OK, I've got the traction control switched off, but there's no limited slip differential, so in the dry, the inside wheel was just spinning away. It's better. I mean, there are little tweaks, but I think it's a bit more of a mild publicity stunt than a serious conversion. And these wet conditions, it's almost scary. I mean, the V12 engine is glorious underneath you, and every little bit of extra power helps. It's not really that much different. Stop, brake, second gear, turn, quarry, give it some power, and then, just try. Oh, it's a lot of fun when you get used to it. But I don't think it's quite the finely balanced chassis that one would like to have, the sort of thing that you get from Porsche and Ferrari. Sorry, Aston. You need to try harder to fool me. So, as far as I'm concerned, fun though it can be, it is perhaps time for the DB7 to be laid to rest.
We're talking about road rage and have come to Doncaster, a perfectly normal town full of perfectly normal people. We've come to this perfectly normal terrace to meet the owner of this trusty red Fiesta. 29-year-old Rob Hughes is an account manager, a placid, civilised member of society. But by his own admission, he becomes a monster when he drives. Girlfriend Annabelle witnessed one of Rob's biggest red mist moments just a couple of weeks ago.
It was raining very heavily. Then this car came hurtling up behind us and his lights were flashing at you. And then you started slamming your brakes on because you just went mad, didn't you?
He undertook, and as he was undertaking, sort of swerved in towards us. Quite a lot of swear words sort of exchanged and hand gestures.
I remember saying to you, just chill out. I was just like, it doesn't matter, it's raining, stop, slow down.
All I was thinking about is I could see him in the distance. I was plotting his demise. I was willing him to hit the lorry he was tailgating.
He decided to try and ram him off the road by swerving into the side of him.
If he'd have spun off the road, even evil as it would be, I would have probably stopped and had a laugh at him. I've never known myself reacting in the same way anywhere else other than in the car.
We wanted to see exactly what it was that wound Rob up. Seemingly, he was massively sensitive to bad drivers. He even has the "How's my driving" numbers programmed into his mobile phone.
Yeah, I mean, learning to drive is great, but why do they learn to drive them so slow? Police cars that do 50 miles an hour in the inside lane. Come on, stupid. Come on, you're blonde, not just blind. So. Stupid. Just when I was in a good mood as well. Things with this car, it's 400 quid. Most damage I can do to it is 400 quid. It's tempting to just pile into it.
Clearly Rob needs some help, so we turn to Europe's leading motoring psychologist and behavioural troubleshooter, Conrad King. He thinks road rage stems from the car's status as the ultimate weapon.
If you want to kill someone in this society, the easiest way to do it is with a car. You don't have to look them in the eye, you don't have to know them, you don't have to care about them. All you need to do is just stop concentrating or lose your temper for 10 seconds. And when you chuck someone in a car, you give them that ability to kill easily. And that's going to change your personality. So you get this feeling of power, this feeling of freedom, you can go anywhere, do anything. And then someone else does something on the roads, and that takes away your feeling of freedom and power. And traditionally, countries and individuals have gone to war to protect their freedom and power.
So how are we going to tone down Rob's warlike instincts? Well, after a quick bit of bonding...
And let's face it, there's a lot of people out there that probably deserve a good kicking, including us at times.
Conrad decided that what we all needed to do was to go shopping. We needed to establish how Rob maintained his cool in everyday life.
And what's astounding here is we've got, hundreds and thousands of people vying for space. There's no traffic lights, there's no routes laid out, and yet there's no conflict. An old guy stalls in front of them. The two of them wander around. I mean, you can see from the body language there, the two of them are completely relaxed, particularly him. And that's with somebody stopping dead almost in front of them. If that had been a driving situation, it'd have been on the horn and wishing him dead. Again, I mean, here's a classic case. You've got someone in a wheelchair, they're having to slow down. You've got someone elderly, they're able to move between them with no fuss whatsoever. If that had been an equivalent driving situation and a disabled driver had been going too slow, he'd have been wanting to do unspeakable things. Here we've got a situation where the woman in front has actually put a card in a couple of times. She's dawdling. Now on the road, he'd be getting frustrated. Here, he can actually see he's dealing with another human being.
And that's the key. Here we're dealing with real people, whereas drivers are dehumanised because they're in a car and so much easier to get angry with. Plus, when walking, you subconsciously give more room to those around you, and a check step or quick smile diffuses any potential conflict. The trick now is to transfer that mindset next time Rob straps himself into his Fiesta. Join us later to see if the retail therapy has worked.
Hello and welcome to Iceland, where the 4x4s play free!
Now in Britain, off-road entertainment usually involves fields, random sheep and mud. But in Iceland, they drive up glaciers for fun. In 4x4s that are so highly modified, you can run over your arm with impunity. Now that's trick suspension.
And I'm still alive!
I joined a group of Icelanders tackling the most extreme expedition drive the country has to offer. A trip up Europe's largest glacier, the Vatnajökull. We took the long way round to get there, a 250-mile trip on Iceland's only coastal highway. It was an expedition in itself. You run into sandstorms that can strip paint off a car in minutes, and then round the next corner you're plunged into minus 10 degrees and snow. The expedition organiser was a proper Icelander, with a proper Icelandic name and Muppets accent, Magnus Ragnarsson.
It's great because when you travel here, you can just turn a corner and you're in a different country almost. You have a new setting of lava or a green valley. It's just the textures are great.
Now, you may have noticed that these aren't standard 4x4s. The stock item would be no good at all on a glacier. So these have at least 12 grand's worth of jacked up suspension and huge low pressure tyres. All that means that these 3-tonners can literally float on snow. Trouble is, progress on the road is slow and bumpy because they can't make these massive tyres perfectly circular. And it didn't improve much when we started to climb into the mountains.
We've come off tarmac onto wobbly gravel roads. Well, the tyres have gone down to 10 psi. It's like driving on jelly because the tyres are so huge anyway. We are actually heading out into the fairly serious bits. There's virtually no steering feel. And you're driving up a cliff about to get onto a glacier where they'll drop them down even further. It's quite weird, to say the least, if you're used to driving road cars. Okay, so we've come along the blue bit, which is the sea, along the beach, up through the brown bit, which is a bit of the interior, and now we're on the base of the glacier, which is the white bit, hence my rather fashionable baby grow. And we're about to head up to the top, so I'd best go and get ready.
With tyres down to their 3 psi minimum pressure and the temperature down to -27, we set off to make the 8-hour trek from the base of the glacier to the active volcano that marks its highest point. Like Scott of the Antarctic, only fatter and less clever.
It's like driving over a piece of paper. You just can't see anything.
All the Toyota Land Cruisers we were driving were different, but the star of the show was this baby, the Polak, a car that's been to both the North and the South Poles. How cool is that?
The Polak has got a giant fire on the front. What he does, he just drops it down. So when he was going across the poles, if you drove into a crevasse, it gets stuck on the other side. So the crevasse is like that. Puts this bit of metal on, drives into the crevasse and just gets stuck so you can pull it out again. That's Icelandic technology.
See, the theory of snow driving is just to keep going. That way you float on the hard layer that's at the top of the snow. If you get stuck, you have to roll back till you find hard snow or get dug out. And when you're going, it's gravity-defying stuff. But it is very slow. And even slower because you do get stuck rather often, like every 10 feet. In all that white, you can't tell whether you're moving forwards or backwards. It's like travel sickness, but without the promise of relief if you stop. And then the weather got worse, Icelandic hardcore style, and we started getting tyre problems.
All right, we've been going down the glacier, and our tyres, which are running really low PSI, have come off the rim and wrapped itself around the axle. Now we're trying to fix it, but we're in the middle of a blizzard. We can't see anything at all, and I just don't think we're going to make it to where we're going. It's a bit of a disappointment, but my God, this is harsh.
The tyres back on, but even Icelandic determination was no match for the worsening weather. This was a whiteout with attitude, and much scarier than it looks. We were still miles from the top of the glacier, and there was another problem to contend with. We were running out of diesel in a couple of the trucks. After 13 hours of battling, we reluctantly decided to turn back. The mighty Viatnakul had defeated us. The Icelanders were devastated. I was, well, rather relieved.
I'm knackered. Everybody's shattered. I'm not sure about this adventure lot. Doesn't seem to be much fun.
But going down wasn't as bad as going up. We followed our own tracks and it only took a couple of hours to get back off the glacier. Next day, we found a smaller glacier with the right kind of weather and the right kind of snow.
Gas, 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 gas.
It was big fun. We may have been thwarted in our attempts to climb Viatnakul, but I'll be back.
We're back with road rage and have taken Rob Hughes, a man who drives close to boiling point.
Is she on a phone? Yeah, this stupid cow.
And tried to reform him. Our car quack, Conrad King, has told Rob to treat other road users with the same patience he gives dawdling pedestrians in the high street.
Right, and if you want to just stop, turn the engine off. Right, before we start, before we drive anywhere, you've got to decide how you want to drive. So how do you want to drive today?
Well, courteously would be a good start.
It would be a good start. Getting your mind right before you even begin a journey is vitally important. It's much easier preventing road rage than curing it. Conrad's second tip is to do with not placing such high expectations on other road users' skills.
There are millions of idiots out there on the road, and you have to do some thinking for them, if only to retain your sanity. When you're kind of wanting them to do stuff perfectly, they're not going to do it, and you're always going to get annoyed. You're always going to get irritated.
The third important thing to do is give people plenty of room. It's impossible to be cut up if there's a big gap in front of you.
So here, you've got someone indicating there, because you're not 10 or 15 feet behind the green car, there's plenty of space for them to get in. And you're not feeling like, oh, you should be telling them off. Plenty of space, even when you come to a stop, leave plenty of space. In theory, you know, if the car in front breaks down, you want to have space to get round it.
Yeah.
Or if you're really paranoid, if the car in front is full of South American terrorists, you want to be able to kind of speed away. But fortunately, you're not quite that paranoid. Give us another half hour.
Well, we did, but his paranoia didn't increase, and South American terrorists didn't turn up either. In fact, everything seemed to be going well, despite the rush hour, tricky roundabouts, and a school at chucking out time. Not once did Rob reach for his horn. He even started giving way to oncoming traffic.
Probably would have tried to have a go at making that one.
Yeah. And you got one wave out of two, and you'd have
Yeah.
probably got a wave off the blonde if you'd have waved at her first.
Ah, so there are benefits to being courteous. But then the ultimate test. We all tensed as a white van loomed large ahead on a direct collision course. Surely he'd reach for his horn.
Come on, that white van was in the middle of the road, and you didn't even blink.
I saw him come in, sort of anticipating using a white van, and make allowances.
Making allowances? What? No swearing? This is a new Rob. It seemed Conrad's advice had got through. Fingers crossed, he won't forget it. Of course, we can't all carry a psychiatrist around in our glove box, but we can all learn to count to 10.
So the next time the twerp in the Transit or the Burke in the BM cuts you up, or worse, don't rise to it. Don't get angry, just stay calm. They're not worth getting stressed about.
The next instalment of Fifth Gear is a car chase special on Monday at 8 o'clock. Joining us will be Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, James Brown and Madonna. Don't miss it.
From Fifth Gear to The One, The Matrix is our movie next.